Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars. SoundCartel. Between emails, calls, meetings and things that need to be done urgently, when do you find the time to actually do some work? Well, it's a cultural and productivity issue that needs to be driven from the top. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Do you find during the course of the day, people constantly demand your attention, and by the end of it, you're left with a lot of unfinished tasks? But have you ever thought you might be the one doing the interrupting? Do you copy someone on an email who doesn't need to be? Do you tap someone on the shoulder for a chat when they're in the middle of something? Productivity guru Dermot Crowley gives us all pause for thought in his book, Smart Teams, How to Work Better Together. Dermot says there are 4 key productivity issues we face in business. And as he tells Chris Ashmore, email is at the top of that list.
Email's a funny thing. It can be overwhelming when you're getting 20 emails a day for some people, but I'm dealing with executives who are getting 300 to 400 a day, and I just think that is ridiculous. And it didn't used to be the case 20 years ago, so now we have to deal with this. I reckon issue number 2 for a lot of people is meetings. Not for everyone, but for a certain level in most medium to large organizations, people are spending way too much of their time in meetings and having to, I guess, try to balance the time in meetings with the time that they've got left to get other stuff done, and it's completely out of whack. I think a third issue is the fact that we are driven by urgency. And everything now is urgent. Everything was needed yesterday. And this has just become the norm in most organizations. But I reckon the biggest issue that I talk about in Smart Teams is the fact that it's not just personal, it's actually cultural. And we need to see productivity beyond what it's traditionally been taught as personal productivity training, where we give people skills. We need to actually change the culture in organizations, and that starts from the top down. So I see productivity as a leadership issue, and I really believe that leadership teams need to put it on the agenda and need to lead by example and change the culture in their organization.
Well, you've written a book called Smart Teams. I suppose the obvious question then, Dermot, what are the qualities of a smart team?
Well, the first thing I want to say is I want to be really careful here and make it clear that I don't think that teams out there are stupid, and I'm not looking for a market of stupid people that I need to train. Smart Teams is just a title for the book that goes along with my first book, Smart Work, and it's really talking about working differently together as a team, and it gets to that whole cultural piece that I mentioned. I guess the qualities of a smart team member are a bit like values or they're a mindset that we bring to work with us. So for me, the very first quality is the fact that we are purposeful. So we always approach our work with a sense of purpose. And that means whether we have a meeting, whether we send an email, whether we're collaborating with someone else, we're always really clear about why are we doing this and is this the best way for us to actually work together. So that's number 1. I reckon we need to be mindful, and that means that we need to manage our own attention and not let ourselves just get distracted all the time. But we also need to be mindful about the impact that our behaviours have on everyone else's productivity. And I reckon in today's busy workplace, we're all so busy that we've kind of forgotten this, and we cause a lot of what I call productivity friction for other people every time we email, every time we meet, and every time we collaborate. The third one for me is being reliable. So being the person that people can rely on. And that means we do what we say we're going to do. But it also means that we negotiate our workload and we take ownership of that. And then finally, the fourth quality is we need to be punctual. And that's a no-brainer. We should turn up to meetings on time. We should finish meetings on time. But it's not just about meetings. We should also be punctual with our deadlines and our deliverables. And I reckon that a lot of the friction that gets created in organizations when we work together would be reduced dramatically if people all slowed down a bit and just thought about how they organized themselves and how they worked with these 4 qualities in mind.
Well, you mentioned earlier email is one of the issues we face when it comes to productivity in business. How does a team learn to communicate without the burden of overflowing inboxes?
Sure. Well, I've just come from working with a team in a large consulting organization, so very, very busy. And it was quite amazing that I was working with 4 very senior partners and then a number of their support staff. And the 4 senior partners were all getting in the region of 200 to 400 emails a day. A lot of those were either what I would call noise, so they were just things that they didn't really need to receive, or they were emails that other people had sent them with the best intentions, but again, they were just creating a certain level of noise, things like CCs. They had a culture in the team where senior people would be CC'd on pretty much everything. And the fact was they didn't have time to read all of those CCs, nor did they actually need to receive them. And it was really interesting watching this team discuss the issue. And when the support staff said, "But don't you want me to copy you in on all of this stuff?" The partner said, "No, we never read it, so it's probably not of value to do that." And I reckon that's what teams need to do to begin with. We need to just sit down and have a discussion about how do we use tools like email and how can we reduce the level of noise that we're creating for each other and therefore allow all of us to be more productive.
Now, urgency is a matter that you deal with in the book, and many people in business would admit to dealing with matters that are urgent, but you say most urgency is false.
There is a lot of urgency that is either false or unreasonable in today's workplace. And what I mean by that is false urgency is where other people make things urgent, even though they're not really urgent. Or we make things urgent, even though they're not really urgent. So when people have their email alerts turned on and they tend to react every time an email comes in, what they're doing is that they're actually applying urgency to things that aren't actually urgent. So we're creating the problem for ourselves. So that's false urgency. But there's also unreasonable urgency. And they are things that are urgent because somebody else left it until the last minute and then they put it on your plate. Or even worse, you left it until the last minute and then you have to deal with the urgency yourself. And I reckon that if we were more organised and we delegated work in a more timely way and we managed our own workflow in a more timely way, we would create a situation which was far more proactive and much less reactive and urgency driven than it needs to be.
And turning off your phone at times?
I absolutely think that is a critical strategy in today's workplace. In fact, I don't have any email alerts on my computer or my phone. The only thing that will get cut through from me is a text message, and even then it's just on vibrate. And the people around me know that if they need to get me urgently, send me a text and I'll get that. But don't expect me to be looking at my email, or don't expect my phone to be ringing every time an email comes in.
How does a business owner create a more productive culture and smarter team?
Look, I reckon, as I said earlier on, it starts with leadership, and leaders need to lead this from the front. So I guess the first thing is they need to model good behaviours. Nobody is going to work differently and work in a more productive way if they see you working in an unproductive way. They will always copy what you do in the end. So I think that leaders need to hold themselves to the highest account. I think that they need to take the doctor's creed, first do no harm. I think they need to take that in a productivity sense and make sure that as a leader, not only are you supporting productivity and allowing it to flourish, but you're not actually a part of the problem. So you need to make sure you're not the one who's creating the unnecessary urgency, or the one who is turning up late to meetings all the time, or the one who is sending 1,000 emails out unnecessarily. I think that leadership teams, when they sit down and really think about the impact that they have in the organization when it comes to productivity, they're actually quite shocked. And the thing is that a leader's shadow, it casts a big shadow. It really has an influence on many people in the organization.
That was productivity guru Dermot Crowley. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schilberger, Chris Ashmore, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts and Belinda Trimboli. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more Be Daily next week. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.